Hiya, I'm Paula from Chic Emporium, and today we have got a brand new project. Really exciting, loads of steampunk going on today and loads of techniques that even I haven't used before, so it could go one of two ways. So I have ordered from the internet lots of steampunky paraphernalia. These are wooden, but I've also got some metal keys, some metal charms, some cogs, some even tiny keys. And we're going to do some kind of montage thing on the front of this, sticking them down. I've ordered some special glue, E6000, so we're going to see how effective that is. The colours that we're playing with today are here, and the main colour is going to be this colour from the Lazy range, Funky Dora. But we're also going to be doing some dry brushing with pumpkin pie, stone rosy and creme de la creme. I've also ordered on the internet a load of steampunk cardstock that we're going to use to fill the holes at the back and make a backdrop. And then last but not least this is another new technique that I haven't used before, is we're going to use the Chic steampunk stencil, and down the front on the drawers I'm going to use this paste, which is going to give me a raised stencil up the middle of the drawers. So we'll see how that pans out. So we've taken all the hardware off the drawers. Always good to keep them in a safe place so that you don't lose all the bits and pieces, because there's a lot of it. So we need to take them off first before we start painting, and then we're going to paint all of it in the Funky Dora. I'm then going to do the sticking on and attempt the stencil, and then we'll have to leave it overnight till tomorrow because it needs overnight to dry on both those things. So we'll pop back in a bit when we've painted it all in Funky Dora. Right, we've done a full 2.5 coats of Funky Dora, and I want to show you what I've done and what I haven't done and explain my reasoning for it so that you can understand the process that's happened here. So we've very deliberately left the brass fittings out because this is, after all, a steampunk project, so we think they'll be in keeping with it. If you can zoom in closer, you will see that even though it's had 2 coats, there is still some areas that if I was going to do it a plain colour, I would have put another coat on. But because I know I'm going to be dry brushing on it, it would be an absolute waste of a 3rd coat. So I can very happily leave it like this with 2 coats. So in this area here, we've made sure that we've painted around the edges because we know that we're going to be sticking cardstock in, but it might not fit right to the edge. So to allow for that, we've done a careful paint man using a sponge on a stick to get into the nooks and crannies. It's quite a fiddly job getting into the nooks and crannies, so that's taken quite a while. So then if I show you down here, we very deliberately haven't painted here, here or here because it will then make it very difficult to go in and out. There's hardly any room for a layer of paint. I've tried hard to paint just a little bit inside because some drawers fit better and easier than others, and it's the most annoying thing in the world when you push the drawer in and you can just see the lip of wood showing through and you have to get it all out again and start painting. So I always paint just inside the edge, on the sides as well as there, but try not to allow any build up in the corners because that will make the drawers quite tricky to put back in. You can always use a bit of sandpaper to rub it down, but if your drawers are sticky when you want to go to put them back in, first of all sand down there and there, then sand down the edges on your drawers, and finally use a bit of wax down the side, and that should help them glide in and out very easily. So on the drawers themselves, all we've painted at the moment is the fronts. And again, very deliberately, don't paint down the sides because it makes it difficult to push them in and out. So even though it looks nice, it makes the drawers much more impractical and problematic afterwards. So I would recommend leaving them. We may, when we're finished, paint the inside of the drawers, but they're quite clean and in good condition, so we may not. We'll decide later. Right, so I've masking taped my steampunk stencil to the bureau. We decided to put it on its back so that I'm working with gravity. I don't want anything running, although I don't think it will run. This medium is quite soft as you can see. So I've never used it before. It's called Deco Art Media. I found it in Hobbycraft. So it's at an angle because I didn't really want it uniform down, so then we'll probably end up patching this in another place down here afterwards, but we're just going to try and get this on. So I'm just using an old card to act as a scraper. It's going on very easily. You can see it's just filling the stencil. Fabulous. I can imagine this would look absolutely great in writing stencils. I've got a very large French writing one, and I reckon that would look really good relief. Very easy, it's giving me plenty, it's not building up. And it says that this takes 24 hours to properly dry, which is why we're doing it in the first stage of this project now, so that we can leave it overnight before we move on to the next stage. But so far so good. I'm not actually using very much either. You can't see this, but Chalky's very determinedly trying to join in and play. We've already had a can't find the masking tape situation, and lo and behold, Chalky on his bed with the masking tape in his mouth. Hilarious. Does like to make his presence known. So we've gone right over the edges here, and I'm hoping that once we've taken the stencil off, that we'll have enough time before it goes hard to just poke around with it a bit and then move it. Remove the bits that have gone over the edge. Right. I don't think it has to be absolutely perfect, because we can always use sandpaper afterwards to rub it down, but I think that's all the areas covered. So, according to instructions, we now lift off really quickly and straight away. We don't give it a chance to go off. So. Right, so what I'm going to do is fiddle around with those bits, see if I can just clean them up before it goes hard, and then we're going to reselect another spot over there to finish it off. So we'll pop back in a bit. Right, as you can see, we've plastered our euro in varying textures. I think it's something that you have to keep practicing. So the one that I did first is quite lightly done. Hello Chalky, never shy of the camera. And we've got a bit darker and a bit heavier there, and then finally the one on the top is really quite thick. So I'm hoping that we'll get some varied texture going on by the time we paint over, but we can only try and see what happens. I washed off my stencil immediately, came off really easy, just as if I was washing off paint. So I think the credit card worked really well. So far I'm rating the product as really easy to use, so we'll see what happens when it's dry. Right, so it's all painted, the plaster stuff is now drying. I think it's looking great, it's looking different. Each one is different from the other, but I think that will add to it. Chalky. Right, I've ordered from eBay a whole load of paraphernalia, all steampunky. It was all very cheap in little bags, and things came through. Some of the things came through much smaller than we expected, like the little keys here. Some of them actually gave a measurement on size, so we knew what we were getting. So you need to be careful if you do that on eBay, because it's quite deceiving. They show you a large picture. Right, I found this E6000 glue online YouTubing. What a fabulous thing that is. And I'm going to use this as a more industrial type of glue to stick my bits and pieces onto the bureau. So I'm hoping gravity's not going to make it all drop off, so we'll have to see, because I've never done this before or used it before. So this is the first stage of sticking it on. Then we need to leave it to dry overnight properly, and then I will be painting over and doing more effects on it by tomorrow. So I'm just going to put the first bit on. Yeah, it feels reasonably secure. I could slide it around, but it's not going to slide off, so that's good. So let's try. Got another bit. I quite like the wood colour of these on their own, but I do think I probably will be painting over them.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. My bed and a pillow for my head. I got a pencil full of lead and some water for my throat. I got buttons for my coat and sails on my boat. So much more than I needed before. I got money in the meter and a turbo heater. Oh, and now it's getting on the road. So they getting sweeter. I got legs on my chairs and a head for a hair.
So we spent the first bit of this morning very carefully cutting up all of the pieces that are going to go in here. My lovely assistant has done me a little plan of what goes where, which is really useful. So this is the time-consuming bit, to be honest, is measuring and cutting and making sure that you've got bits for everything. We decided that we weren't going to put bits on the sides because there's quite complicated shapes and it would have been very fiddly. And the cardstock that I purchased for this was only that size maximum anyway, so we were going to have a problem with height. So we've had to do some patching to make that work. But it's very, very simple to put in. That was the tricky bit, measuring it all out. So all we do is use finishing coat. I've got a little workbench here, so finishing coat in a little pot. I'm going to, it's been nicely labelled, 1 floor. So I know exactly where it's got to go. And then I literally slide it in. Couple of seconds to shivvy it around, and if there is a little bit overhang like that, I can always use a craft knife when it's all dried just to shivvy it off to give it a nice flush finish. So it's as simple as that. So I'm going to carry on with the next bit. That's going to go at the back. It would be very easy to paint the innards of one of those, all one colour, and be done with it. But this requires some effort, but I think it's worth the effort when it's done. It gives it the wow factor. So it's a bit fiddly, but it doesn't really matter if the finishing coat gets onto the wall or paint because it just dries matte anyway. And then I'm going to go back to the first bit because, as you can see, as it's got wet, it's getting a bit bubbly. So I'm just going to smooth it out and keep going back to. Okay, so I'm going to carry on and complete the rest in exactly the same way, and then I'll come back. Right, as you can see, we've finished. It looks amazing. I'm really, really chuffed with it. Now, we had some problems, we had some difficulties, so I thought we'd sort of talk about it. The finishing coat, which in my opinion is a fabulous product and can be used for so many things, was not the easiest thing to use for this, and we ended up resorting to good old PVA glue because PVA glue's got a bit of slideability, and this was so fiddly and getting bits underneath ledges and wanting to be able to move it around a bit once you got it in, that the PVA glue gave us what we needed to be able to shift. So I shall go on to use the finishing coat to protect what we've done and give it a layer all over, but in terms of putting it in, I think PVA was the way to go. So the next stage, and you haven't seen this yet, this is what we finished off yesterday. So we've got lots of bling on here. That E6000 glue was amazing. We didn't have to lie it down, there was no movement. You could fiddle around with it and move it at the time, but it didn't feel like it was going to drop off, and gravity overnight certainly hasn't made it drop off or move or shift, so it was really pretty good glue. It now feels properly solid. We put some random bits over here to try and balance it out a bit, and added a couple of bits to our stencils. We've put these round the what's going to be the door handles, so you'll see that in sort of full-fledged. So what we've got to do now is paint over our raised texture so that then we can see what that's going to reveal. We're going to do some dry brushing. We're also going to paint over this and then bring this back up. So lots of fun stuff to do today. Can't wait to get started. Right, I'm going to use my trusty favourite tool, the stencil brush, and the original base colour Funky Dora. And we're going to just paint over. It's a shame because it looks so lovely as it is, but I think it's going to be worth it in the end. So I'm going to use it because it will help get into all the nooks and crannies. Just to cover everything back to neutral.
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Finished. I'm really pleased with it. I don't know if you can see with the camera that how fabulously the stencil, the raised stencil has worked, and the fact that even the one that was a little bit shallow where I'd scraped it back quite well, you can still see really clearly. So by the time I start the dry brushing, it's just going to look amazing. This at the moment is a bit sad that it's been painted because it looks so lovely as it was, but I think once we do the dry brushing it's going to be amazing. So I wanted to just show you, lots of people come into my shop and ask me about paint and how much they're going to need for a project. Well, this was brand new as a project when we opened it, so you've seen how much we've painted with it, and we've still got more than half a tin left. So pretty good coverage for a fairly decent sized bit of furniture. So what we're going to do next is dry it off with a hairdryer so that we're back to completely plain, and then I'm going to show you the dry brushing, and that's when it all gets exciting and we'll start changing. Okay, see you in a minute. Right, dry brushing, this is the fun bit. I use a really crappy old brush like this. It's very bristly, it's completely bone dry, and that's the important bit. If you do wash it, you need to get it off, rub it up and down outside on a brick wall, get any wet out of it because you want it dry. I usually just use the lid because what I'm going to do is literally dab the tiniest, driest amount on the end of my brush, and then gently, not hard, brush over. Look at that. See? So now I'm going to try the same on this raised stencil. I love it. Oh my goodness, I so need to do more raised stencils. Look at that. So when I do dry brushing, I tend to use a light colour like this. This is Creme de la Creme. And then a darker colour so that one acts as the highlights and one acts as the shadow. You can just use one colour if you want, but quite often I tend to use two. It really doesn't matter if you press too hard and you suddenly get a big splodge, because then all you do is some more dry brushing back with the original basic colour. So there, for example, is a bit splodgy, so what I'll do is break it up with another colour. So that's not a problem. Now here we've got an area that we didn't have as much coverage with the Funky Dora, so this is what I meant about it not having to be perfect, because you can use the dry brushing it's also brilliant if you've got a little bit of bleed through, just a little bit, or a problematic bit, to add some layers of colour like this, because then it takes your eyes away from the problem, just makes it look like part of the project. So I've now virtually got no paint on this brush, so I'm safe to do these big brush marks right the way across. And as you can see, it just picks up on the areas that stick up. So already this plain bit that we've got back is starting to come to life.
One, two, three, four. Oh, I got a sheet for my bed and a pillow for my head. I got a pencil full of lead and some water for my throat. I got buttons for my...
Right, so as you can see, I've added two colours, creme de la creme and pumpkin pie, both from the Lazy range, which along with the Funky Dora will actually help me in the end, because when I buff it, I won't need to have to put wax on it first, because they're both from the Lazy range, so that's good. As you saw, I had a bit of a problem down below. We deliberately kept videoing to make sure that you could see how I repaired it, because I decided in the end just to paint it back to the base colour, dry it off, and then add some more white, and then just leave it alone. So I'm going to carry on playing just to get it exactly how I want, and I've obviously got to do the sides. But then we'll come back. It's very nearly finished. I think we need to add a bit of gold, but we'll come back when we get to that stage. Okay. Hiya, well, we're nearly there. The last thing we wanted to do was kind of blend in these lovely brass handles. So we had a bit of a playing field on my make-believe palette here. So we were using lots of these French sheen powders. So we've finally come up with this colour, which I quite like, which is a mix of silver powder, gold powder and a very tiny bit of copper powder with some finishing coat to make it a liquid. So it's quite a thickish consistency, and then we're just dabbing it on, not the whole thing, but I think you'll see it's blending in, giving it a nice colour, blending in the actual base coat paint of the cupboard. And because it's got the finishing coat on, it won't need finishing or sealing afterwards. It will leave it finished, so it will give it a nice shine as well. I think that's a really nice colour. So we're going to do that to all of the handles, and then we're nearly ready for the big reveal. Hey, it's my favourite piece ever, just look at it. I'm so chuffed with it. The pumpkin pie, the creme de la creme, it's picked up all the accents. This is just, I love the stenciling. I'm going to be doing that again and again and again with different stencils. It's so good. Even the handles I think have blended in. I love Funky Dora. I've never used Funky Dora before. Definitely be using it again. It is stunning. So now for the big reveal inside. And you can see just before I do, I have sanded down with a grit 120, just a few areas, but I think the added little bits of brown make it look really nice. So here's the big reveal, dun dun dun, hold on to your seats. Look at that. So I did a stencil there, using the same stencil, but this time flat, and I used a stippling brush to blend two colours, and then we've sanded it right back because it was quite bold, and then I've dry brushed some more of the Funky Dora over the top to sort of blend it in a bit. I think it looks great. And just look at that backdrop. And just the little touches of putting a bit of paper in the drawer, I just think make it all that more special. We've just French sheened the little handle. We've got a bit of pumpkin pie going on the side. We've got a bit of creme de la creme on the other side. It just breaks it all up and just makes it look so good. So chuffed. Thank you for all your support. and I hope you learned something today. I hope that you have a go at some of these techniques and post on the forum what you've been up to and what you've been doing. It would be great to see it. Please follow my page, please like it. It's www.facebook.com/The Emporium Furniture, which will take you straight to Fairy Chic Emporium. Thank you so much. Till the next time.